Time wishes to be part of the restoration of what we call history, so we can be free from the negative effects of the past in our own lives and in creation itself. Time gives us insight and understanding of history and its effects. Therefore, when we're doing something legislatively or authoritatively as the Son of God now, we can have insight into something that happened in the past that affects today, and we can undo what was done to enable that effect to be broken in our present. And then that then affects our future in a positive way. Time is creative and collaborative, so we can access all of history by engaging through the eternal now. And I believe God intends us to be able to do that. Now, I have engaged this a number of times, and I've had lots of testimonies of this, where I began to engage the eternal now, and I would go into that place and just be, and then I would find myself somewhere else. And the first time it happened, I was in a place of worship, and I was just focusing, meditating on being in that eternal place with Father, Son, and Spirit, in that amazing circle of their conversation. And I found myself, I think it was in 1756, in some place in America, actually, in the wilderness with this cabin. And I was physically there. You know, I'm not saying my whole body went there, but certainly my consciousness and spirit. And therefore, there was a physical manifestation. And I went and knocked on the cabin door, and they opened the door, welcomed me in as if they were expecting me. And the problem was a baby was ill, sick, almost dying. There were no doctors. They called out on God. God enabled me to answer that call. I found myself in 1756. I ministered to those people, and the baby was healed. And then I found myself back in the present. And there was a time that it took. It wasn't like, oh, that happened and I was back. You know, there was some time because I was unaware. And I did ask people who observed me, was I there physically? Yes. But they did say, well, you didn't look like you were there. So I ministered that. And then other times I went back into 84, and there was this lady who just died in childbirth, and I was able to raise her from the dead. I went into the cloud of witnesses, called her spirit back into her body, and she then had children later on, which were significant from the kingdom. That's what God said to me afterwards. Sometimes he'll tell me why, if there was a significance, and others times he won't. And, you know, I was very tempted to look up who was born in 1824 and 1826 or whatever, to see what they might have been about. But actually, I then just gave up that sort of curiosity and says, hey, it's enough just to do whatever it is that I can do in these things. And if I've been used in the past, I'm only aware of it when I go into it from the present. It has always been the past. I didn't go back and change history. I went back and was used in history. And there's a difference. And I know it's sort of like does your head in a little bit, and how do you explain time and all of this stuff? But the reality is that's what happened. And therefore, I went into the eternal now. I went back to 1756, to 1824, and other times as well. You know, I've gone back into Africa a few times in the past and shown them some things, helped them find some things. You know, there's just an interesting thing you can begin to do when you're available. I don't go and do it just because I can. I do it when I feel led, or I just find myself doing it. Now, I have led activations at conferences and things where I've said, okay, well, let's make ourselves available and let's see what God does with you. It may take you back in the past, and I get all sorts of testimonies of things that happen, often with children, where children get rescued, or children get saved, or children get healed, or because I think God really responds to children and their cries, and parents' cries in relationship to children. And I've been used myself a number of times. And once I've found myself on the sea, walking on the sea with a lamp, directing a ship away from the rocks it was about to crash into. And that was a weird one, but it happened, you know, and therefore let's not be restricted by limitations of what's possible and how we might be used by God in history to answer these things.